Bet on Bears fans, another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast coming your way. Pat the Designer, Jason McKie in the building. OTAs getting underway. And we got J-Mac on, so y'all know what that means. T-shirts and shorts conversation. He's so excited. Also, we got to take a look at the fact that the Bears did lock up Joe Thuney. Going to be interested to see how this plays out, but I love the fact and how Ryan Poles got this deal done. Got to give a big applause to Ryan Poles on yet another phenomenal contract signing. All that and more in today's episode of the Chicago Bears podcast. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. J-Mac, what's going on in the world of high school football, my guy?
Same old stuff, man. Grinding, all-season workouts combined with graduation. So a lot of my seniors are going to walk across that stage on Friday, get that high school diploma, and move on to, going to college, whether, just for academics. Also, some of the guys are going on for athletics. So it's going to be cool, man. They're crossing the finish line. It was good to see 4 years of development with those guys. So I'm excited, be excited to, see the families and, extend my gratitude and appreciation for them coming to Carmel and being coached by myself and our staff. So good times ahead. Bittersweet because at the same time, it's one of the hardest parts of the year for coaches because you're losing kids. But it's also awesome because now these kids have reached a goal and they're moving on to bigger and better things. So it's good stuff, man.
Didn't you have a young man made the league last year? How'd he end up doing last season?
You said that made the league?
Didn't you have a young man end up getting drafted signed by the
Jets.
Falcons?
There was a guy who we had at Carmel. We made the Jets 50-round roster last year. So he was an alumni. I didn't coach him. He was before me.
Okay.
Yeah, but there was another kid who had an opportunity to mentor and coach, who was a part of my Gym 7-on-7 team, Shaw Smith-Wade, who played for the Carolina Panthers, who played the Bears.
That's what it was.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
From Simeon High School. So shout out to my guy, Coach Dante, who coached him out there at Simeon. He actually doesn't coach anymore, but he's done a great job with that program. Simeon always has elite talent, really good kids, and Shaw Smith was one of those kids who came out of that program under the tutelage of Coach Dante. So shout out to Simeon and Coach Dante.
Hey, I love it. Love to see him making a league, man, following their dreams and doing it any way that you can, honestly. Doing it any way that you can.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little OTA. Some guys have some opportunities to get some jobs, to win some jobs, to go out here and prove themselves to Ben Johnson for the first time ever. But, J-Mac, we already know. The fans of the show already know. T-shirts and shorts. It's the Underwear Olympics out there. They're getting ready to get it cracking. What is the purpose in your mind, this first OTAs for Ben Johnson? What do you think he's really trying to accomplish here, getting things started?
Yeah, I think the main thing is just continuing to build continuity and chemistry throughout the team. The incoming rookies will now get an opportunity to be around the vets in the same huddle, going through the same process. There's still lifting and training involved. But I think the main thing that the coaching staff wants to get out of OTAs is, you're actually getting an opportunity to start installing your system. So installing the basics, like your base formations, right? Your base motions and shifts, your base run game, your base passing game. And defensively, it's the same thing. You're installing, what is our base fronts, our base coverages, what are going to be our base blitzes and pressures and things like that, special teams as well. And you're working on a lot of the fundamentals. And that's what you're going to get through OTAs because you're still in shorts and helmets. And I know all the fans are probably like, J-Mac, he's just an old cantankerous man just yelling about. No, it's really.
You've been there though. You've been there. They can't say you capping on it.
This is the thing, right? If you're in shorts, everybody should look good, right? Because receivers, there shouldn't be a lot of footballs on the ground, right? You're not getting hit. You're not getting tackled. Running backs, you should never fumble in OTAs, although it happens. Like everything should be. It's not going to be crisp because you're still learning. You're still implementing a new system. So, yes, guys are going to have MAs, missed assignments. They're going to have mental errors and things like that because you're still learning an offense. You're learning a new offense. You're learning a new way of practicing. You're getting a feel for being coached in a different way by your position coach. So all those things is important in OTAs. And especially for the young guys, you're having an opportunity to bond and gel with the vets, but you're also seeing how to practice at an NFL level, and the NFL, I don't know how Ben Johnson's going to run his practice, But majority of the times at the NFL level, it's a fast-paced, up-tempo practice. There's no time wasted. So I think it's going to be awesome to finally, get the entire team on the grass and actually practicing as one cohesive unit.
I want to ask you about something here because I remember last season something that did stand out to me early on and actually end up playing out through the season. But first, we got to tell you guys, today's episode is brought to you by the Chicago Bears podcast. Brought to you by the Chicago Bears podcast. Calm down, Pat. Chicago Bears podcast brought to you by the Advantage Dealer Group. Find your next Chevy, Toyota, or Acura and drive off in under 60 minutes, or they'll make your first car payment. Also brought to you by the Hard Rock Casino in Northern Indiana. Las Vegas style gaming, just 30 minutes from Soldier Field, exit 6, right off of I-80-94. I know EO was on the back end, just like, I don't have a brought to you by the Chicago Bears podcast. The podcast is brought to you by the podcast, brought to you by the podcast. That's how we get it done. Shout out to the sponsors that support the show, man. Let me ask you this though, J-Mac, because last season I went into OTAs. You go to a couple of practices and you're sitting there watching them. And I remember leaving probably OTA phase, the second OTA. I was just like, I don't think we have good offensive linemen on this team. You could just see that there was this in the one-on-ones, right? They were getting beat in certain ways, and you got to see some of it when you were on the sideline there, where it looked very similar to some of the situations you've described to us on the sideline, J-Mac. Is there something where you can win or lose a job or set your depth chart heading into training camp off of this OTAs? Because I did leave OTAs last year just going, I feel horrible right now at the center position because it don't seem like we have anybody that can play it.
Yeah, definitely. If you have an individual who's just continues to make the same mistakes over and over again, and that's in terms of knowing what their responsibility is based upon the play that's called or the defense that's called. You have receivers out there continuing to drop passes that can move you up and down the depth chart. Receivers running the wrong routes, linemen going the wrong way in the run game or blocking the wrong person in protection. Those are things that can move you up and down the depth chart, but it's fluid. Like Stephen A. Smith said, it's fluid right now. It's fluid. Like the whole, it's
a fluid situation right now.
Like the whole. I mean, it is fluid. And the NFL depth chart will always be fluid because Ryan Poles and company is always going to be looking out there on the street of the rosters, guys being cut, guys that may possibly be cut to improve their current roster. So it's in the NFL, like. You can never get comfortable. Mainly if you just got paid, like Joe Thuney, you can get a little comfortable, man. Go out there, enjoy that money. You just got another Brinks truck delivered, in your driveway, money bags falling off the Brinks truck, and it's well deserved. So you can get a little comfortable, but at the same time, you still got to go out there and produce. So you can't get too comfortable because you still, with the more money you get paid, there's a higher expectation. And then you got young guys that's going to come in and they see what these veterans are getting. So they're going to go out there and try to compete because they want to have an opportunity to earn a contract that can set them up for the rest of their lives. But like I said, what you do on a daily basis, right? And that's on the football field, your interaction in the building, how you conduct yourselves and yourself in meetings, just everything is evaluated. And that can move you up and down the depth chart early, in OTAs. And then when you get them pads on, that can accelerate you up the depth chart based upon how you're performing, in a physical environment.
Would you say OTAs is almost more important for the coaches to make sure that they're doing things right? Because you mentioned something, right, where wide receivers running the wrong routes and guys missing. And last year in OTAs, we're sitting there and we're like, it's early. Shane Waldron, new scheme is what it is. And then we get to week 12 of the season and DJ Moore and Caleb Williams not on the same page. We're in week 16 of the season, Roma Dunze and Caleb Williams not on the same page. And all those moments where it's like, it's just early, they'll figure it out. They never figured it out. So is OTAs more important for the coaches to be like, this is the time for us to set the standard of what's going to be this season?
Yeah, 100%. I think you hit it on the head. I think it gives the position coaches an opportunity to take ownership of their group in its entirety, because now you have the rookies mixed in with the veterans and the returning players. And now it's the opportunity for me to set the table. Okay, this is how we're going to do things in our running back room. We are going to, after every carry, we are going to accelerate 15 yards further downfield to finish the run to get us conditioned to be able to hit them explosive plays throughout the season. Receiver room, hey, drop pass, 25 push-ups. We're taking fine money. We'll use that fine money to go out and have our wide receivers at the end of the year. You drop a pass in practice, $25. Drop a pass in games is $50. You know, whatever that is. Whatever Coach Antoine Randall how he wants to set up his room. But those are the things in which you get to set the table in terms of the accountability, the way that your room's going to be ran. But it also gets you an opportunity to now, like you said, coach and develop your guys fundamentally. And you get an opportunity to go out there in a practice setting and to start get the wheel spinning and get things in motion. You know, they've been in the office, you know, they've been in pre-draft and stuff like that and putting this scheme together, but now it gives you an opportunity to go out there and to put it in motion, you know, on the practice field. So OTA is awesome because it starts to signify that, hey, the season's getting closer, training camp's around the corner, and you get to get out there on the field with your guys.
You've gone through this situation that a lot of the players are going to go through here this season where new coaching staff, new dynamic, right? You're coming off of going through an OTAs with a coaching staff where they didn't get the job done during the season, so they don't get to stick around going into that next season. Then you come into that Lovie Smith. What was the big change that you felt in OTAs, or did you even feel a change early on in OTAs?
You talking about the coaching change from when we had Coach Duran to Lovie?
Yeah. When y'all went from Dick Duran to Lovie.
Yeah, Lovie's first year, it was tough, man, because it was, man, like we were running literally. And he like Dick Duran's regime, like we had guys who were heavier. And when Lovie came in, he was demanding guys lose weight. You know, guys had to lose a ton of weight because we were running, like, even on offense, even if it was a 7-on-7 period and, you know, a receiver caught the ball. If I was on the left side of the field and the receiver caught the ball on the right side of the field, I had to transition. And we, as an offense, we had to get out in front of that receiver to get a block. You know what I mean? That's like running 40 yards. Like, that was different because under the old regime, you know, receiver catch a pass, before he catches the pass, I'm trotting back to the huddle. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was a different standard and an expectation. Like, hey, you had to run. That defense had to run. All of them had to get to the ball. You know, the guys are punching the ball out. I can recall, you know, Thomas Jones and Charles Tillman getting into it because T. Jones is, you know, after a carry, he's jogging back to the huddle and he's got the ball in his hand and Peanut comes from behind him and punches the ball out. And, you know, Thomas Jones is like, what the, you know, and they get into a little misunderstanding. You know, T. Jones is in the huddle and Peanut's trying to punch the ball out in an offensive huddle. But that was the type of standard and expectation that Coach Smith brought, you know, to his Chicago Bears. It was full speed. It was all out effort and guys were running. So I remember that. I remember saying to my running back coach, like, man, I feel like I'm on the track team, man. It was crazy. And
I mean, like, that's the part where it's with this team, I think it's going to be different because the Bears almost want to get bigger, especially on the defensive side. Dennis Allen wants bigger guys out there, but just seeing, I really want to see in OTAs how the vets react to some of the coaching that we saw in rookie minicamp, because Eric Bieniemy ain't changing who he is for the vets or the rookies. Dan Rashard ain't changing who he is for the vets or the rookies. Ben Johnson ain't changing who he is for the vets or the rookies. A much more aggressive, a much more in-your-face style of coaching where it's like, hey, listen, like, you got to do this way. I get that you think the way that you've been working has been working, but y'all won 5 games last year, so you should listen to me. Like, that level of accountability and that level of change, even in asking, like you said, when you're the running back, run through the end zone. Remember last year, you didn't like the fact that, you know, the running backs kind of stopped at a certain point. And then as we got to training camp, then they were running through the end zone. But early on, it was like, all right, we got the play over. All right, let's get back to this huddle. So it's different. I think that aspect of things is going to be incredibly different because we know Bieniemy making you run through that end zone.
Yeah, and I think you look at it last year too. I think, you know, and I don't want to take no credit away from Coach Morton. Coach Chad Morton, was a great running back coach for the Bears last year. You know, he was one of the guys you talk about running backs finishing. Well, Chad Morton was running with the running backs. You know, Pat, we talked about it all the time.
He was cracking up,
sprinting with the running backs through the end zone. And, you know, it's one thing to set a standard, but it's another thing to be the standard. And I think Chad Morton, you know, he was the standard, you know, when it came to that running back room. And I think Eric Bieniemy, like we've seen, you know, like you saw, you were there at rookie minicamp. I wasn't, but, you know, you see it early on that he's trying to set the tone. He's trying to set the table in terms of the way he's going to coach his running backs and his position groups, and it's not going to change. And if you're a young running back, you've got to accept that. There's going to be times where you're going to get yelled at, and he's going to, you know, overemphasize the details, as he should, as every great coach should, because those details and those fundamentals is what's going to get you through it in the hard times, but it's also going to help you win games, because when you're out there and you're in an adverse situation and you're tired and the game's on the line, what's going to help you overcome that adverse situation or help you win a game is the basics, the fundamentals. So you've got to try to master the fundamentals on a daily basis. That goes with every position group. And you got to have coaches that's going to uphold that type of standard and hold their players to that type of accountability on a daily basis. And that's something that we didn't see from the last regime, that we hope to see from this regime, right? We can't just say, hey, Al Harris and Coach Bieniemy is going to do that. We got to see it now. And I think the start of that is what we're going to start seeing in OTAs. Like, the fans don't see it. We'll get a chance to see it because we're allowed to go out there. But that's what you have to be able to do on a daily basis, from this coaching staff, is be able to make sure that there is no stone, unturned, and make sure guys aren't trying to cut corners. We've got to master the fundamentals, and that just comes down with our technique. That comes down with the playbook. That comes down to the way that we do everything in that building.
I think that can't be overstated, J-Mac, because you look at last season, right? Bears a bad football team, but when their fundamentals were fine, they were fine. When the offensive line wasn't false starting, they actually were able to move the football down the field. Definitely. When Tyree Stevenson ain't John with the crowd, he actually was a decent cornerback that was out there able to stay with the receivers and stuff like that. Like, all of these moments where it's just like, if you're where you're supposed to be and you're just doing the basics of your job, ball is snapped, you stand up at the right time, the actual action of the play worked out fine for the Bears. Yeah. The problem with the Bears so often last season was pre-snap stuff or just mental mistakes, that it goes back to those fundamental moments where I think we heard it enough from the players last season of, when these things happen in practice, they're not being nipped in the bud right in that moment.
Yeah, and that goes back to, players taking ownership of their team, right? We're talking a lot about the coaches right now, but at the same time, like, yes, we talk about Ben Johnson and the coaching staff that he's brought in, right? In terms of, these guys, we feel that they're going to be able to lead this team, in the right direction. But at the end of the day, the forecast of this team, right? Whether or not this can be a good team, could be a playoff team, chance to compete in the division, and eventually compete for a Super Bowl, that doesn't come down to this coaching staff or Coach Johnson. It comes down to the players in their locker room, right? Because it's got to be player-led, right? I've got to have, Joe Thuney, you're one of the veteran guys, right? You know what success looks like. You understand. You've been a Super Bowl champion. You've been around.
And we're both GOATs.
Right, and you've been around one of the best coaches in Andy Reid, one of the best to ever do it. So you know what it's supposed to look like. So, you just got paid. So now it's on your shoulders to, hey, you know what? When the O-line's not clicking, when I know guys are cutting corners, when I know guys aren't showing all-out effort in individual drills or whatever period that we're in practice, you got to say something, right? You got to hold your position group accountable, right? The leaders, whoever the leaders are, whoever the captains are going to be on this team, it's your team. And it's bigger than Coach Johnson. It falls on your shoulders. When we're BSing out there, guys are going through the motion. It's going to happen, right? There's going to be some dog days with training camp. It's going to be hot. You don't feel like being out there. Trust me. We've all been there. I've been there. Times I ain't want to be out there. You know what I mean? But it goes back to the leaders of this team. What are you going to do to make sure that nobody's cutting corners and that we're out there maximizing our time in practice? That way we're getting better each and every day to make sure that, hey, we're going to give ourselves a chance to be successful throughout the season.
You mentioned Joe Thuney. I want to talk about his contract here in a second. Mm-hmm. But can leadership be established in OTAs?
Definitely.
OTAs, you're like, oh, that's the leader. Because I feel like last year I could clearly identify, okay, well, DeMarcus Walker's one of your leaders. Yeah. And Tevin Jenkins was like, Ryan Bates is always speaking up. He's the one that's always holding us accountable. And no disrespect to those players, but the team kind of panned out based on how they played through the season. That's kind of what we saw. If those were your leaders, that's not a great situation for you to be in.
Yeah, for sure, man. There's, it's just because you're one of the higher paid guys on the team doesn't make you a leader. It doesn't mean guys are going to follow you. It doesn't mean guys are going to listen to you when you open your mouth and speak. It's different types of leadership that we all know, right? Leaders by example. What is he doing? What time is he in the building? What time is he leaving the building? What is he doing while he's in the building? Is he just showing up? Or is he really showing up, watching film, lifting, galvanizing the guys around him? Hey, after practice, we're going to stay and we're going to run extra. You know what I mean? or we're going to stay in offensive line. You know, we're going to stay and work on some pass sets. Running backs, we're going to stay and we're going to run some gassers because we got to get in better shape. You know, those are the type of guys, right, that you'll see take shape in terms of leadership beginning in OTAs, right? And like I said, it doesn't have to be a guy who just got paid, but it's got to be a guy who's performing on the field, but it's also got to be a guy who's performing off the field, but is carrying themselves like a pro. You know, Olin Cruz was huge. Olin Cruz was big for us, right? Not because everybody's scared of Olin. No, because Olin took care of his business each and every day. Olin was one of the first guys in the building. He's watching film. He's breaking down film. The O-line stand after practice. The O-line set the tone. O-line stand after backs. We're staying after too. You know, you're leaving early? You're not going to watch extra film? Oh, no, we're going to go back and watch film. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you have that type of leadership and player-led accountability, like I said before, it gives you a chance to be good. Doesn't mean you're going to be good, but it gives you a chance to be good.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what that is going to play out here, especially with Joe Thuney. Just got the contract today. I mean, J-Mac, finally seeing this extension come through. And by the way, hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. I don't know if you noticed, J-Mac, we're like one of 3 channels that actually goes up to practice. So y'all should definitely subscribe here.
Definitely, man. We're gonna give you the real, man. We ain't gonna
we're gonna give you the real. I'm
gonna give you the real when they're in shorts. I ain't gonna be like, oh, he looks awesome, man. God, look how many tackles he broke. Hey, get out of here. He's in shorts. He ain't break no damn tackles. Stop all that garbage, man. We'll give you the real, man.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie to you. It was one play last year. I think it was Swift over the middle. And he broke one and got down the field, scored a touchdown. Everybody was like, DeAndre Swift with a great play. J-Mac was the only one that was like, man, coach should have called the play dead, man. That boy would have been tackled 10 times.
I love Swift. I love Swift, man. I love Swift. Swift's an awesome guy. You know, I think he's a good running back, but you know,
that play should have been called dead.
Yeah, in reality, it's like, come on, man. They didn't pass. It's a 4-yard gain, not a 40-yard gain. Like, come on, man.
But Joe Thuney signing today, signed a 2-year extension at $17.5 million per Adam Schefter and his sources, making it a $51 million deal for the next 3 years with $33.5 million fully guaranteed at signing. $33.5 million in his bank account today.
He got signed 30. As soon as he wrote his name, he got $33 million direct deposit. Well, you know, Uncle Sam won't take his portion, but still, that much. I don't even care. Here you go. Good, man.
Hey, especially here, poor guy. He going from Kansas City to Chicago.
He's straight though. He gonna come out all right though.
He's still gonna be good,
but
getting this deal done, seeing the extension. I mean, this was the final piece to the offseason. How do you feel about the deal? I don't know if you saw where this ranks, J-Mac. He is now the 10th highest paid, 10th, kind of tied 10th and 11th, highest paid guard in football. And dare I say, he's probably the 2nd or 3rd best. I think this is a steal of a deal for Ryan Poles.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's good because now you add another piece to that O-line. You also have created some cohesiveness for the future. You know, now you have guys that are going to be with each other for a couple more years now. You also paid a guy who can still play, but he brings that element that we've been talking about, right? That leadership element off the field and in that building. A guy who, once again, knows what success looks like, has been around it, has been a Super Bowl champion. You know, a guy who knows how it's supposed to be. So I think it's a great signing all around. We knew that when they brought him here as a free agent, that it was a good free agent signing, and now you reward him, you know, with a new contract. And you know, let's see how he does this year.
It's going to be interesting to see how I think how do you deal with adversity, right? Because it's not going to be perfect here. I would love to say the Bears hit the ground running, and please do. By all means, hit the ground running. Start off the season 6-0. We off to the races, and we excited. And, you know, maybe you lose a game to the Ravens or something in there. But like, I would love to see the Bears be great. But more than likely, it's going to be a work in progress here. Joe Thuney's coming from 2 situations that were not a work in progress. Now you had to do the work when you got there, but you start off with the Patriots with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. They've been winning Super Bowls already. They know what they're doing. And then you go from there to, I guess, can we say the 2nd greatest coach in NFL history in Andy Reid, and arguably the 2nd greatest quarterback, depending on how his career finishes out in NFL history, with Pat Mahomes. How are you going to be able to deal with that coming into a situation that's being built currently?
Yeah, I think with Joe Thuney, it's when we talk about the success in terms of the organizations he's come from, the coaches on down to the quarterback, it's a standard that had to be set in place, an elite standard every single day, because you're getting everybody's best every single week. And not only are that, all eyes are on you. You know what I'm saying? Because you're one of the top franchises and organizations in the league. So there was no, Bill Belichick wasn't letting those guys cut corners. I know a lot of guys that played for Coach Belichick, and they were like, he was calling everybody out, calling Brady out, cussing Brady out. Everybody, nobody was safe if you weren't doing what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? And that's the type of elite standard that you got to have, right? To have that success that the Patriots had, to have the success that Kansas City had. Everything you do has got to be an elite level. So Joe Thuney understands that. That's what he's come from. That's how he was brought up, right?
Yeah.
That's how he developed in this game. So it isn't going to change, right? Now I'm coming to an organization where I had those leaders, right? When I came to the Patriots, I had those guys I had to look up to understand what it meant to go out there and practice like a Super Bowl champ, to practice like an AFC champ in New England, right? To go out there and to be able to do those things on a daily basis, right? But now I got to see that, and then I was developed and groomed into that leadership role in those organizations. Now I get to come to Chicago, and I get to be a part of establishing that, right? I know what it's supposed to be like, but now I'm that guy that the young guys are going to look up to, right? I'm the guy that can set that elite level in terms of preparation in meetings and practice in the weight room and so on. Here in Chicago, I get to set the table. I get to lay the foundation as a player. So I think it's awesome. It's a great signing, and it makes sense.
He was voted the MVP of the Chiefs last season on a team that has Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce. They were like, Joe Thuney's the best player that we have because of everything that he does for this team. Can't wait to see what he does here for the Chicago Bears. I know the question that everybody's going to be talking about in the comments already is going to be, with $7.4 million opened up now, does this open up a situation for Trey Hendrickson trade? I think there's a couple of directions you can go with this. I don't know if the Bears are fully settled in at the running back position just yet. We'll see how they feel coming out of OTAs and minicamp. But this money could be utilized to possibly bring in somebody like Nick Chubb, who's still unsigned, or maybe a J.K. Dobbins if that's a move that you want to go after. That would be a trade. But if they did, and I know everyone's going to lose their mind now, if they did want to go after him, the money is available to you with some of the post-June 1 cuts and trades that could be there for you. If you can add a Trey Hendrickson to this team, and maybe you have to move on from some of the pieces on there, J-Mac, you doing it?
Yeah, I mean, a player of his caliber who's, been a consistent presence in terms of pass rush and getting quarterback sacks. I mean,
35 sacks in 2 seasons.
You got to look at that. I mean, anyway, I have an opportunity to improve my roster, but to improve my roster with a game changer like Trey Hendrickson, you got to look at it. So, but it goes back to Ryan Poles and company, right? We know Ryan Poles is going to make sure that he's not doing anything that's going to hurt this organization in terms of making future moves. You know what I mean? And that's why we've been major players every offseason, right? So far that Poles has been at the helm, because he hasn't, has he made some bad moves? Yes, right? But majority of the moves that he's made, it's enabled the Bears to have money, to have cap space, to be major players in free agency, right? He's made the right trades and stuff like that, so that we have the draft picks to continue to build this organization the right way, but to not handcuff this organization. So, like we talked about, if it makes sense, if it works out, if it still sets the Bears up to be players, in the future, well then, hey, you got to explore that option, because a talent like Trey Hendrickson, he can really come in and transform a defense that's already got playmakers on it.
Yeah, even this Thuney contract is forward thinking. Essentially, you're going to have to pay Caleb Williams in 2027, or at least start having that conversation.
Yeah.
All of these deals are off of the books in that 2027 season, to where if somebody's there, somebody needs to be developed, or somebody needs to step in. Hopefully at that point, right, you can do that. Or if Joe Thuney is one of those anomalies, it's like, he's 35 years old, but he's still one of the best guards in football. You re-sign him to a different deal for the age that he's at, and you compensate him fairly there. So we'll see what ends up happening in the long run for the Bears. I love the contract signing. I think if Hendrickson is on the table, you pull the trigger. I figure out the rest of it when I figure it out. At a certain point, J-Mac, here's the one thing. I love that we have the money to do stuff in the offseason, but at a certain point when you're winning, you shouldn't have money to do stuff in the offseason.
Very true.
You shouldn't be players in the offseason usually you players in the offseason because the players you had on your team, you're trying to get rid of them.
Right.
We'll see what the Bears end up doing, man. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and showing love to another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast. Make sure to tune in with us tomorrow. Me and Courtney Cronin will be up at Hallis Hall reacting to what we see from the Chicago Bears' first OTAs practice and seeing, Ben Johnson comes out and starts setting the depth chart a little bit early. I'm watching who's getting what carries. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. For J-Mac, it's your boy, Pat the Designer. Bet Don, one love. Peace.